Okay, we're recording. Hi, I'm Jamie, and this is Dave, and we're going to talk about the ideological susceptibility of nature, how common sense notions of nature are open to far-right capture in informal environmental education. So here on the screen is a quote from the eco-fascist manifesto of the Christchurch killer, advocating for a green version of ethnic autonomy. In 2019, partially due to a perceived threat of the overpopulation of non-white people from non-European origins, the killer murdered at least 51 people in New Zealand mosques. This highly contextual yet stark example highlights the very real consequences of some conceptions of how land and human relations to it should be, of viewing ecological conceptions in isolation, or concepts in isolation, and ignoring the social, historical and political discourses that they develop with. With this talk, we discuss why the correlation of certain romantically idealized conceptions of how land should be, for example, the purity of nature, with fascistic, racist and supremacist behaviors, for example, the purity of race, is more than a coincidence. We might think of concepts such as ecology, nature, species, environment and conservation as relatively neutral or benign. However, as humans are the ones who discuss these concepts, describe how they should be related to, and in effect create different versions of them in their own ends, then they can instead be understood as highly malleable, political and affecting. Cohen suggests that the dominant sort of romanticized analysis, or this sort, focuses on the destabilizing encroachment of industrialized society into wild spaces, the restorative and even ecstatic powers of unblemished landscapes, and the companionless dignity of non-human creatures in which woodland, serene waterscapes, sublime vistas and charismatic megafauna feature prominently. In this nature, there's a utopian emphasis on homeostasis, order, and the implicit benevolence of an unexamined force-labelled nature. Timothy Morton suggests that this bright green view peddles nature as affirmative, extroverted and masculine, sunny, straightforward, ableist, holistic, hearty and healthy, or as Cohen posits, foundationally pure. But what is the genealogy of this thinking? These selected founding fathers of environmentalism, cherry-picked by us from conservation's history, highlight a specific genealogy of nature depictions, pervasive ideologies regarding taxonomized romanticizations of undomesticated environments, the purity of nature. These men also, and relatedly, embody an example of what can happen when this purity of nature is paired with taxonomized romanticizations of racialized identities, the purity of race. For instance, Carl Linnaeus's categorizations went beyond his famous taxonomy of species to participate in the invention of race, depicting Native Americans as reddish, stubborn and easily angered, Africans as black, relaxed and negligent, Asians as sallow, avaricious and easily distracted, while Europeans were depicted as white, gentle and inventive. Race as a concept has been used by many European countries to validate their conquering or subjugation of members of the lower races and to justify slavery.
An early example of modern ecological thought. In 1815, Ernst Moritz Arndt stated, "When one sees nature in a necessary connectedness and interrelationship, then all things are equally important. Shrub, worm, plant, human, stone, nothing first or last, but all one single unity." Arndt was a lover of romanticized rural landscapes and agrarian cultures, whose xenophobic nationalism led to his belief in an inseparable identity of racial purity and a reconnection to nature.
We can see in Ernst Haeckel's ecology that only particular types of men are the ones who have relationships with the rest of nature. And as Stavminer notes, by stressing the connection between the purity of nature and the purity of race, he paved the way for German National Socialism.
The inherent racial bias of the father of national parks, John Muir, saw no place for First Nations peoples in wilderness landscapes, considering them subhuman, lazy, dirty, and superstitious, at the same time as calling wilderness divine. This is the environmentalism that led to the expulsion of First Nations peoples from so-called wilderness areas, which were reserved mostly for privileged white people.
Eugenicist and white supremacist Madison Grant laid out the superiority of the Nordic race in his 1916 book, The Passing of the Great Race, which Theodore Roosevelt called a capital book, and Adolf Hitler stated, "This book is my Bible." This book was partially responsible for the Nazi concentration camps, as well as the more recent white genocide or replacement conspiracy theories. Grant was considered a groundbreaking conservationist who considered eugenics and conservation two sides of the same coin.
Perhaps equal to Grant, Theodore Roosevelt's head of National Conservation Committee and Forest Service, Gifford Pinchot, has been called the father of conservation. Pinchot was a eugenicist who promoted the forcible sterilization of non-white people. Pinchot compiled a conservation report which advocated eugenics. Roosevelt stated that it was, quote, one of the most fundamentally important documents ever laid before the American people.
Although holism has ancient origins, it was a term reinvented in 1926 by Field Marshal Jan Smuts, a vocal advocate of apartheid, who used it to support his theory that nature would find its own stability once holes were formed, as long as all the holes were in their correct places. This stability was one that when combined with his vision of white supremacy in a world stabilized by the order of the British Empire.
At the height of the 1983-85 famine, David Foreman, founder of Earth First, said, "When I tell people the worst thing we could do in Ethiopia is to give aid, the best thing would be to just let nature seek its own balance, to let the people there just starve. They think this is monstrous." The ecologist Garrett Hardin shared Foreman's view in his paper, Life Ethics, the Case Against Helping the Poor, in which he advocated for the sterilization of poor people.
What is significant is that some strands of ecological thought are derived from pseudoscientific creations, such as natural order and natural purity, or the primary law of nature. These strands, however, are weaved together with politics, which enhance the power of certain people over others, and other than humans, and disguise a caring for a romanticized version of nature, which denigrates the unnatural or unnaturally out of place other. There seems an ethical imperative to keep in mind the hateful potential of these skeletal underpinnings in all spheres of contemporary environmentalism, including environmental education, as implicit bias hides in innocence.
Far-right ecologism is becoming more prominent in the lives of young people, especially in online worlds. It aligns with prominent narratives of replacement peddled by right-wing media figures such as Tucker Carlson in the US and nascent political movements such as Patriotic Alternative in the UK, but is also easily combined with the invented notions of pure nature and ecological balance. Indeed, these concepts may infer this very politics. The ostensibly environmental "we are the virus" hashtag, which proliferated online during the pandemic, points to racist biases. At this time, eco-fascist responses were being actively peddled on influential online message boards such as 4chan and 8chan. These connections often start with attempts at humour, which then merge into serious political positions in the wider online community. Whilst it can be tempting to think of providing experiences in nature, promoting holistic ways of seeing, of thinking ecologically as politically neutral or beneficial, in truth, certain pedagogies may unwittingly promote biases that have the potential to become warped in learners' future experiences. Environmental education research has paid surprisingly little attention to this issue. Learners bring their own developing politics with them to experiences of environmental education, understanding nature in different ways, and learn from others in the process. We should be on guard against concepts of pure nature combining with pure being in responses to the tensions and problems we face. Whilst critical environmental education already offers much by focusing on the relationships we build with ourselves, with different people, different places, and different beings over time, we might also learn from exploring alternative ecologies, where the foundational concepts, such as pure nature, balanced ecology, and equilibrium, appear troubled or even absent. Perhaps suitable thinking partners include queer ecology, Tim Morton's dark ecology, Jeffrey Cohen's prismatic ecology, Deleuze and Guattari's flat ecology, Brady and Bignell's post-human ecology, and contemporary animist thought. Each refuse straightforward nature-culture bifurcations. These alternative ecologies would take the violence wrought by concepts of pure nature seriously for a more equitable, inclusive, and diverse attempt at planetary health. Jettisoning pure nature does not mean jettisoning ethical orientation, but instead helps give us clarity about what we lean on for ethical leverage and orientation in environmental education. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.